Every ego is formed out of the judgments of the other. That's how it comes into being, as a reaction to the judgments of the other, projected onto the subject. And one determines one's identity by the way others treat you, or your interpretation of how they treat you. And if it doesn't feel loving, then the judgment against yourself is that you weren't lovable. And then that stain of a negative judgment about the self becomes part of the unbearable knowledge of the ego. It's knowledge that is untrue because it is taken in as if it were true rather than as the projection of another who was not able to see you as you really are because of their own karma, maya, their own limitations of love and of perception. But those judgments about oneself that one gets through the role one finds oneself having to play in the family system, then because of the unbearable pain that they cause, need to be projected out. And so one judges others. And one tends to create a strategy of defenses so that those deeply hurtful judgments don't get triggered, and that one is able to keep out of one's space those which one feels are threatening to one's ability to stay secure from attacks that one's subconscious mind feels too vulnerable to be able to cope with. So this becomes the fragility of the ego that needs to use judgments as defenses, aggressive defenses. And that aggressivity is used in order to keep one's space safe for the ego to be able to hold on to whatever it feels is valuable but insecure. That doesn't pertain to its true nature and therefore could be lost. And so it's that illusion of duality and the fear of loss, ultimately including ego loss itself, that then produces the way of life that produces more and more karma that gets encrusted on those original self-judgments that turn into external judgments that create ever more of a sense of guilt, shame, fear, anger, and all of that brew of negative emotions that the ego is stewing in and trying to run away from. And it's only when there is a recognition that none of the judgments that you believe have any truth. They are a private religion that every ego takes on. And we have to convert out of that false religion, which is an idol worship, but it can be a negative idol worship, right? You can be either the best idol in the world, who others should worship, or you are the worst and need to be, improved and helped and all of that, and a mixture of the two, and all the permutations that come from that essential duality of good and bad, or even good and evil. So the way out is to stop eating from the tree of the false knowledge of good and evil and to eat only of the tree of eternal life, which is free of all judgments, is just pure divine love. Because you are a child of God, you are entitled to God's unconditional love, and God's love is unconditional, without judgment. And the more you accept that as the only reality, the more that the ego is flushed away in the receiving of the Shakti that comes when one feels worthy of receiving a full dose of it, and has the courage to allow the Shakti to cleanse you of all the stains that will ultimately cleanse you of the judgment that's at the core of the ego. And it's feeling that it exists because it has been stained by some emotional assertion that is like a knife in its heart. And once that is removed and the heart heals, the ego shell falls away, and the unconditional love of the God Self shines in its perfection. And all of those judgments are realized as having never had any reality or validity or relevance or pertinence to who you are. I hope that's helpful.
It's very helpful, thank you. And I was very beautifully struck by you saying that it takes courage to be cleansed, to be purified of all of that. I had never thought of it, courage as being necessary to be healed.
But that courage is already inherently in you. You have it. It's not that you have to find it somewhere. Okay? So courage is also faith in your own inner goodness and your realization that you belong to God. And in that ability to surrender, you are cleansed. And it's given to you as a gift of grace. No matter what karma you feel is clinging to you or sticking to the identity, it will all fall away in that surrender of love. Okay.
Thank you. Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Okay.
Thank you. About the difference between judgment and discernment. How does one know when one is discerning between, let's say, right mind, wrong mind, or right, wrong in any situation, good, bad, or when one is judging?
Real discernment does not come as a thought. It does not come in the form of duality. It comes as a recognition, an instantaneous recognition of the truth. And the truth, of course, is the non-duality and the absolute perfection and goodness of all. So as soon as there is any judgment of bad or of some, let's say, wrongness, the discernment has already lost its center. And when one can remain without judgment, the entire contextuality of the event that the ego with its reality tunnel is judging as being bad and wrong, when it's seen with the shutter of the camera open rather than closing on that event and saying, see, you did bad, right? Without doing that judgment, then one sees the infinite contextualization in which it had to occur and is the part of a stream of unfoldment of the explicate order that reveals the perfection of all that is.